I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, and I was kidnapped in 41 at age 2 and brought to Moulton, Alabama, near Huntsville, Alabama, where in about 1956 is when NASA, the space program, was really installed in Huntsville. And Werner von Braun, the German space scientist, was brought over, and a lot of other German scientists. And my kidnapping had to do with, obviously, it took down my father, Edward VIII, who was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe from Madison, Wisconsin, which the Illuminati and the Kennedys took down my father because he wouldn't go along with them. And all the treaties that were signed after then are illegal. Elizabeth's father was appointed by the Illuminati, so they're a fake monarchy. They work for the Illuminati. And look what you've stood by. The Americans, too, really invited Meghan Markle, and Harry's probably not even Harry. The whole point is they're crooks, they're traitors, and you helped install them. Roosevelt, your president, the Kennedys, JFK helped in my kidnapping, brought me to Moulton, Alabama, a pigsty. Peggy and Carl were twins. They were born out of wedlock about a year prior, older than me, I would think, best I can find out. Anyway, I want to read some letters I found out about my kidnapping. Wrote a book, tried to get it published about mind control, Tesla files, etc. And I was almost killed several times, especially April Fool Day of 80. And Jack I met during that time, he saved my life really more than once, but he was undercover FBI working for the paper. And then later, the Huntsville Times, he was out in Santa Fe next to my aunt, Georgia O'Keefe, lives in Albuquerque. That's when I was finding out. I always knew something was wrong, that with how I grew up and everything, and that I could remember being brought there, etc. But later, after I did the book, it was in 1979, on my father's birthday, June the 23rd. But of course, it was 79. The FBI issued a letter to me from U.S. Attorney William Harper out of Atlanta, stating that there was an ongoing investigation, national security involved. So Jack, I met him then, and then later on he was out at Flint's when I was in a campaign to replace Larry McDonald, the doctor that I had written about, actually. And he was supposed to have gone down in the KAL from Juneau, Alaska to Seoul, South Korea. Well, that was a lie. It was a plot to make it appear he was dead. And a lot of other people have said that also. Try to turn this around. Nixon was taken off the flight just before it took off, and Geraldo, the reporter, got off. So supposedly Larry McDonald went down, the senator congressman, which was a lie. I'd written about him in this book. It was an expose, and not just him. It was involved in a lot of things, the Tesla files and everything. That's why I want to read Jack. And later I said that he met with Larry Flint, because actually the FBI run Hustler magazine, or they did, and I assume they probably still do. But I was out there in a campaign because Mr. Flint had been shot by a program shooter, and I was telling about that in the book, and that they were done in patterns, the murders. But it was like the Tesla files, you can cure an illness or create it, like cure cancer back then, or anything, diabetes, you name it. It could have been cured, but then you start looking at where your money goes. You got, Jerry Lewis had the telethons. My husband was the one that reminded me about that. Where's all this money go? And they say you have no cures. Of course you do. You've had it since then. Now I'm going to, so there was a list of people at Redstone Arsenal, Huntsville, at NASA, that died of suicide, cancer, shooting, knifing, and at least a lot of them were done with mind control. But I want to get to this. Jack said he was telling how they tried to discredit me and him. And now then, where did he, okay, it's down here. I'm just going to get to this. Remember they took me to near Huntsville, and that's where the Space Center began, and even named it after the man that helped kidnap me, JFK. Kennedy space flight at Cape Canaveral. I think they've changed it back. So he's talking about Jack. After all, it was the guts of the U.S. space program, the home of anti-ballistic missile research projects, the location where every Army tactical missile system field anywhere in the free world was managed, where security leaks of sensitive data were occurring far too often, where the Army's missile and munitions center and school operated, and the great space race, and where J. Edgar Hoover's FBI Division 5, a super-secret police agency, had operated since the early 1940s. Remember, they brought me there in 41, 40 miles away from Huntsville, the Space Center and all. In fact, it was so sensitive that it did not exist, with the links to Daytona, Ohio, and I don't know about anything about that, but Washington, D.C., New Orleans, Louisiana, with links to. So this is kind of like what I've been writing about, the links to murders, to my kidnapping, to, okay, but Dayton, Ohio, I'm not aware of anything there. Okay, here, let me get down to here. I don't want this to go off. And sometimes the cloak of national security can be seriously abused, not to protect the nation's secrets, but to hide and bury blunders like kidnapping me, taking down my father, my mom, who was an American, etc. So they put a thing on it. I guess I'm living, if you call this living, and my sons, I hope, are alive. It's a hell of a life to call it living. But anyway, I'm alive, and maybe I owe that to some of the FBI. I probably do, who helped the Brits try to save me, and the Brits try to save themselves in the meanwhile. Okay, and sometimes the cloak of national security can be seriously abused, not to protect the nation's secrets, but to hide and bury blunders. But in other words, reputations could be really not just tarnished, but if all this were told, like I put up on my video, and every word of it's true, and there's a lot more that I didn't put up. So I wanted to get down to this part, though. He's talking about MK Ultra, mind control, mind altering research project with the Central Intelligence Agency. At the time, had been dabbling in mind control for years. That's what I've been telling about. You don't hear any of your congressmen, Pelosi, Elizabeth Warren, none of them tell about mind control or any of this, my kidnapping, taking down of a king, and the real queen was Georgia O'Keeffe's sister, my mom, Claudia Ruth O'Keeffe. You've kidnapped the monarch, that's me, Victoria II, the minute I was born, due to papers my father had signed when they forced him out. So I'm not going to go into that again. I wanted to get this up. But you don't hear any of the truth coming out of anywhere. I've put this up. Okay, okay, and there was always the deal with crazies and being crazy about, or at least making it appear that way on the surface. If blackmail or payoffs didn't work, try others. One such was the MK Ultra. Okay, I said that. Now, they did bring that before Congress one time in 53, I believe it was, or 63, more like, no, it was 53. Give them a slap on the wrist and send them on their way. So who's at fault in all this? You all know about my kidnapping. Every State Department, Henry Kissinger, my God, back to Eisenhower was general and hobnobbed with, and I don't want to keep going on this. I'm tired and can hardly talk, and I'm sick and old. And I feel it every day right at the moment. But so that I don't keep going, let me go down here. Winston Churchill was a friend of Eisenhower, and then he became president. And Churchill sold out. I mean, my father's the good guy in it. He didn't even marry Wallace Simpson. I've said that. He married Claudia Ruth O'Keefe. He loved his country, wouldn't go along with the Illuminati. And now then, because they took down my father and kidnapped me, the United Nations, that is the front for your global government, your Illuminati, end times. So it's sitting up there, United Nations, and you've got the real queen down here trying to tell you all this, and Meghan Markle's over there having twins or whatever, and, And there were ways to deal with crazy, so they just call you crazy if you tell things that they don't like or people don't like. So I want to get down here. There were targets. Sometimes some were given LSD, mind-manipulating chemicals in intent to destabilize. And the targets never knew that they were given the stuff. Another program was called Psychotronics, formerly called Psychotectronics by the later defunct Soviet Union. In some cases it was called brainwave entrainment. Only a percentage of the area's population would be subject to it. Oh, and I want to skip to here because this is going on. A gentleman named Nikola Tesla was researching psychotronics as far back as 1930, and this is what I found I was writing about. And the mind control, you can cure illnesses or create it or program people to shoot. How do you think all these shootings were done? I mean, I don't want to say a word here, but anybody, I can't understand it. Anybody should put two and two together. They're taking away your guns. You can program people to kill in now. From the time I was writing about it in 1976, it's gone so proficient now that corporations can use it. It's done through the low frequency, and they use the Morse code. Back then it was the ham sets. Now it's satellites and God knows what. I'm not updated on it, But anyway, you could cure an illness created, and the Tesla files were stolen. The Illuminati got them, and I'm not going to go into that again because I want this to go up. I'm going to skip down here to the last part of it. So he's talking to me, which I knew some of this anyway. Truth is sometimes like that would only open Pandora's box. So I'm giving you a brief glimpse because I think you deserve it, considering what you've been through yourself. At quiet moments, I do try to make a grounded assessment of all the above. In the dastardly events above, particularly as related to the FBI's Division 5 and assorted shenanigans, were public, what would be the results? It would perhaps be a very destabilizing for the nation as a whole. The Huntsville experiments, the agony of 63, well, he's the one that kidnapped me, Kennedy. So agony, if they told the truth about that, and taking down my dad and the torture and about his son coming up on the mountain where I was banned, but I had to live somewhere, National Forest here. Yeah, Jeff K. Jr. And for the nation as a whole, the Huntsville experience, the agony of 63, the aftermath, clandestine Huntsville, and here's what Jack says, I ain't no public enemy number one. I recall being told once of an individual who jocularly referred to me once in Huntsville this way. The last thing we need here is some red-blooded, all-American boy waving the flag and calling it like it is. In other words, Jack told the truth. Still, I keep trying, says Jack. So from one crazy to another, thanks for caring. Signed, Jack Hartsfield. And his nephew, I believe it's his nephew, was Hank Hartsfield, commander of 2 of the shuttles. And thank you, Jack, wherever you are.